All right. Well, welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to have you. As usual, we're also very grateful to Teknion Data Solutions for hosting these webinars. Teknion is a proud partner of a lot of different really cool companies and solution providers listed out there. Warescape makes data warehousing easy and automates that process. Tableau, which is the focal point of this webinar today, is an incredible data or visual analytics platform which continues to grow, and we're going to be looking at some of the new features there. So some incredible things. Alteryx, of course, is a wonderful platform for analytics and data prep. Data Robot, wonderful for artificial intelligence and automating things around predictive analytics. And Snowflake is a great platform for hosting your data warehouse in the cloud. And the great thing is that these partnerships work together, and so we're able to see some really incredible things when you take these platforms, which are best in class, and start to use them together. So really cool. Today we're gonna focus on Tableau. I am Joshua Milligan, and I'm excited to be joined by Bridget Cogley. Both of us are Tableau Zen Masters, and we love Tableau. We love the new features that are coming out, along with just the incredible paradigm that Tableau has had from the beginning. So excited to share with you today. There's some contact information. We'll post that as well elsewhere. Today we will be looking at some of the new and exciting features of Tableau. Now, some of these will be features that are already out, that have come out in the last version or so. Some of these are new features yet to be released, but maybe they're in beta, and that's always fun to see what Tableau makes public about the future. And some of them are Tableau Prep features. So it's going to be kind of an eclectic mix, but lots of fun and lots of excitement along the way. A little bit of housekeeping up front. We'll do some Q&A at the end, but you can submit your questions as we go. So somewhere you probably have a panel that says questions. Feel free to type in any questions as we go, as you think of them. We'll try to hit most of them towards the end if possible. And if we don't, then we'll try to reach out in person. Also, we are recording, and I am just double checking that as we speak. Yes, it says it is. So we will make that available. It usually takes a day or so before it's up there, but that's the link. I think we've gotten good about including a link in a follow-up email to everyone, but definitely let us know if we missed that. Also, before we get started, the Tableau Conference is coming up. For a while, it seemed like it was a ways out there, but wow, it is next month, New Orleans, and should be lots of fun. So we're going to show some really cool new features, but my favorite part of the conference is when the developers get up on stage and show off some of the things that they're working on, even beyond anything that any of us have seen. So I'm looking forward to that and some other really cool things. Teknion will have a booth there, so come check us out. Bridget and I will be there, possibly at the booth. The Zen Masters will have a section in the community, so we'll be around. We'd love to see you if you're able to make it and if you're there. Also, both Bridget and I will be presenting at Tableau Conference. So I will be presenting how to train your data dragon. It is a session focused on Tableau Prep and how you can use Tableau Prep to work with even really challenging data, getting it into shape for Tableau. I'm excited about that. And Bridget, you also have a presentation. Oh, there's a link. Sorry. We'll share the links in the chat.
I'd be really excited to see. My session is called From Headlines to Headway, and it deals with data ethics. We've seen a lot of questions about ethics and data in the news, and so my session kind of attacks that head on And so you'll kind of see where we go from the headlines on over to kind of the headway and what we can do about it. So we'll be providing a link and providing more information so that you can kind of sign up, earmark these sessions, and just say, hey, I'd be interested in attending these. And then, perfect. So I think we are ready to start our session. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to jump right into this. So one of the things that I really like to do is I do a lot of floating design. And design's probably kind of an area where I really focus and spend a lot of my time. And so sometimes I like to play with shapes and putting the data in a certain way. And so what Tableau has started to do is they are now giving me some new options for formatting. And so within the current version, so the .2 release, I can come over here to Layout and select the background. And you'll want to do it in this pane. And I can set it to none. And this awesome thing happens in that my filter then becomes transparent. So this is live today on the latest version. And so that has started to whet my appetite for some of the other forthcoming features. The big one being, and something that I've asked about probably for a number of years, is dashboard transparency. And so what this then allows me to do is kind of to create some very fascinating infographics without worries about where things land and fall. So you can see here I've got, a brain, I've got synapses, and I can put them almost right on top of it. So particularly for your marketing departments, this feature is extraordinarily compelling. And so again, you can see here where I've selected the worksheet, I can format it, and going into that background, just making sure that I've selected none, and none means none when I'm dealing with the beta. So this is the .3 version, so this is not yet live. As soon as it is live, I will be that noisy neighbor. So you won't want to be around my house when this goes live because we will be having a massive, massive party. The other thing that Tableau is introducing, and it's not live yet, but it will be, is this density mark. And so that is a new mark that is available from the marks card. And so rather than using shapes, which is what I did when I originally made this dashboard, I can actually go right to density marks. And it's a little hard to see here on the worksheet level because I do have this set to none. But when I go back to my dashboard, you can see it really looks like kind of it being in a PET scan. Again, you'll probably hear endless fascinations about the brain. But now I can do density marks. This is great for showing populations, activity, where things are happening. So I'm very excited about the new density mark. And then some of the other features that really make me happy, and this is live right now, is the grid. And so for people like me who float, you go to dashboard, you select show grid. The other really cool part about this is, let's say I've got this set right now. Well, maybe this isn't fine line enough. I can go to grid options. And so you see here, I've got grid options, and right now it's set for 20. If I want to change that down to say 15 or even 10, I can get some very precise kind of flow in here and start lining things up. So I'll kind of see that this isn't necessarily lined up. The other new feature that's been introduced is I can now use my keyboard. So you can see my mouse is all the way over here. I'll actually stop moving it. And I can use my keyboard, the arrow keys, and press this over and move this and line this up however I'd like. If I want to move this over, 1 pixel, I can just use a single arrow key. If I want to move it over 10 pixels, I'll hold down the shift, and I can move it 10 pixels, and I can move it in any direction I like. So this is really nice. It gets me outside of this box up here. For anyone who's done a lot of floating and kind of pixel perfect lineups, you're very familiar with this box. It's kind of a pain point. And so now I can actually forget about this box and spend a lot of my time in my dashboard moving things around. So that really makes me excited. One of the other really nifty things that's coming, it's not yet live, is enhancements to mobile layouts. And so if I come over to dashboard, go to device preview, we've all kind of seen this window where we can kind of toggle through, do I want this as a desktop layout? Do I want this as a tablet layout? or probably the most challenging, and especially if you do a floating dashboard. And I'll just go ahead and click on some of these elements just so you can see that it is indeed all floating. It's been a pain point to do mobile design with it. So if I come here, click mobile, and say I'm going to add a phone layout, the latest version does some really nifty things for me. Number one, it goes ahead and it floats this all into a tiled layout. And two, you see that it automatically started resizing. Now I'll definitely want to reorganize this, but it definitely makes it a little bit easier for me from a design standpoint to not have to fight with it. Now if I say, I don't want it this way, I can go ahead and rearrange that layout and change it up there. So I've got some nice options. So that is a really exciting feature for me. That it, from a phone standpoint, I can very kind of quickly, easily toggle this over, and it does start resizing and changing things up. One of the last things that has been added that I'm really interested in, and initially when it was shown to me, I was like, I don't know about this. But then I kind of played with it, and particularly when dealing with mobile, is the idea of a button. And I've played around with these before in some of my other work, but you can set up a button and say, okay, well, here's this button, and I'm going to go ahead and edit this button and have it navigate to another dashboard. And before we had to do this through actions. I can change the image. I can put some text here. Click OK. And you'll see that here's my button. Again, I wouldn't normally lay it here. I would probably put it somewhere else. And then because I'm in desktop, I will need to hold down my Alt key and press on this, and it'll take me to the next dashboard. Now, it is in beta. It did just crash that. So I'll go ahead and jump over to another dashboard. So this is an example of where I've got kind of slides almost, if you will, and kind of created a UI. So this is where that button would be extraordinarily handy. So I could actually replace out some of the items here and say, okay, well, no, I want this button rather than all the tricks I used to do. And so I can even change out the image. And so I can choose an image. I can go into my pictures folder and say, okay, well, I took a couple snapshots of this, and there it is. And so I can actually just recreate what I've done. And that's not right, but we'll go with it. And so then I can go ahead and resize all this and put that where it belongs. And get rid of all the action and navigation and kind of extra load that I've put on Tableau trying to do this. So that's kind of an easy way to jump through. So Joshua, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Bridget. I'm going to show my screen now. All right, so I have a few features that really have me pumped, both in desktop as well as Tableau Prep. And so I'm going to start there with Tableau Prep. So Tableau Prep is very interesting in the sense that their release schedule is even faster than Tableau Desktop. So they have a major release once per month, which means that new features are coming out all the time, and that's really fun. Some of the ones that are making my life a little bit easier, I'll go ahead and show you. So I'm going to just drag a file in here. In fact, several files. So oh, look at that. That's what happened. Tableau Prep. Drag the file back in, and it worked that time. That's great. So I've got a file called Originals, another file called Prequels, and another file called Sequels. And as I start to look at these, I like to add a step just to see what's in the file. The profile pane is really nice here. And what I see is that I have just a list of names along with occupations, and then some columns that give me income for several months, bank account balance for several months, and that applies to potentially each individual with within the file. And if I look at each one of these, very similar. So names, jobs, income, and balances. I might just double check a few things here. So everything looks pretty good. And add another step here just to double check, and everything looks pretty good here as well. And so my thought is that I want to union these together, and Tableau Prep makes that very easy because I'd like just a single data set with all of these individuals. And as I start to build this union, nice drag and drop, what I notice is that some of the fields didn't match. And I could see that before in Tableau Prep, so even the first version would show me the color coding here in the profile pane. But the latest version has a nice mismatched field summary here in the lower left. And this is really nice because now I can easily see a field and know which branches or which sources that field came from. So I can see job came from prequels and sequels, but then I'll have to look down and I see occupation came from the originals, and those are actually the same field. So even here, I can just control-click to select multiple and then merge them together. It disappears from the mismatched fields because now it's matched. And I'll notice the same thing here. It was called bank account balance in the originals, but only balance in prequels and sequels. So again, I'll probably merge them just on a month-by-month basis so that January is merged, February is merged, and March as well. So that just a little new feature, but it sure makes life a lot easier. And at this point, I've dealt with all of my mismatched fields. Everything's matching up really nicely, and I can see that in the profile pane. The only exception is table names, which is a field that Tableau adds. And so now I might look at this in a new step, and it's unioned everything together very nicely. I can start to see how things look, and it looks really good, except I know that when I go to Tableau, I'm not going to want my fields like this. This is kind of I've got extra columns. It's a wide data set. I'd like to have just one income column and then maybe month as a dimension. Same thing with balance, one balance. Now, in previous versions of Tableau Prep, this would have been a little bit challenging because I did have the ability to pivot, so I could pivot columns. But here I need to do what's called a coordinated pivot. I need to pivot income, and at the same time, I need to pivot balance. The latest version gives me that as an option. It's still just adding a pivot step, but then what I'll do is I'll take the fields that I want to start with, so maybe balance first. I'll select those three, and we'll pivot those. And you can see Tableau automatically renames the field, so it called pivot values balance, which is nice. We'll look at what we might want to do with that. But now if I want to coordinate a pivot, so I want to pivot income to, I just click this plus sign to say let's add another set of pivot values, and I can select the income fields and add those, and now it knows that that's income as well. It's still kept my pivot one names. I might even just rename that right here to month. And at this point, I'll have a really nice data set. I might have a few cleanup things to do, but now I've got the name, I've got the job, I've got the income by month, and so that makes it really nice. I can see everybody has a record for each month, and that works really well. If I take this to Tableau, it's going to be very easy to start to do my analysis on income or balance, and so Tableau Prep makes that really nice. Another just really little feature, or at least you might call it a little feature, but definitely highly requested, was the ability just to change the color of a step. So Tableau Prep does a great job of giving me some defaults here, but I might, for whatever reason, decide that I want a different color for a step, and that color will then be used throughout. So you can see that that it knows now that purple or maroon, whatever color it looks like on your screen, that has become the step for that color for that clean one step. And if I decided I wanted to add a color there as well, I can. And additionally, one last thing that I really like is I could always rename a step. So we'll say we'll call that Union Movies just to tell me what it's doing. But I can also now add a description. 200 characters, but that's really nice just to start to annotate some things, and especially as I have maybe some complex logic. Union's not too complex, but maybe the pivot here might actually be really nice to just say that was a coordinated pivot of income and balance. And that way, when I come back to this several months from now, or even a few days from now, I'll remember why I did that pivot and exactly what it's doing. I may still want to come look at it to understand what it's doing here. But especially if you're adding in calculations and things that aren't immediately obvious, I love having the ability to add that description to a step, just to give yourself or someone else that insight into what you're doing. So Tableau Prep continues to grow and expand, and I'm incredibly excited to see where it's going. I'm sure that there will be lots of new features yet to come. But then I'm also excited to see what's come out for Tableau itself. So in Tableau, there are a couple of features that I would call game changers, and I hesitate to use that term because sometimes it feels like, oh, everything's a game changer. But in this case, I think that there are a couple that really do make a difference. And so one of those is a spatial join. So I've had the ability for a while in Tableau to connect to spatial files, but what happens when I have maybe multiple spatial files? So here I've got a set of shapes that give me petroleum storage sites, and so I might start with that and bring that up here. So a lot of detail about where petroleum is being stored. If I take a look at that geometry, I realize this is specifically petroleum being stored in Texas. And so that's really interesting, and I might take a look here, slice things up by facility name, and so now I can see some of the names here of facilities. There are a bunch of facilities that don't have a name. I might just get rid of those for now. But now I've got a circle at every location of a storage facility. Sometimes your data set will have additional geographic information. Here I've got county and state and zip code, so I could very easily see, okay, how many storage facilities do I have in a given zip code or in a given county. That works really well, but then sometimes you have to go somewhere else to find additional geographic information. For example, what if I want to know the number of petroleum storage sites per congressional district? Maybe I'm doing some sort of investigation into congressmen, and are they getting kickbacks from the petroleum industry, or who knows, something crazy like that. Well, I have another shapefile that gives me those congressional districts, but prior to Tableau 2018-2, I didn't have an easy way of bringing those together, but now I can. I'll edit my data source, and I will add another shapefile. So this can be any type of spatial file. In this case, I'm using shapefiles.shp but you can see here there's an ever-expanding list of spatial files from KML to Esri, GeoJSON, all kinds of things that you might want to use. And so here I do have my my congressional districts, and I'll connect to that shapefile. So you'll notice I did an add here, which allows me to add multiple connections for this data source, and I'm going to join this together, but I don't have any foreign key relationships or any identity fields or anything that would give me a match. The only thing I have is the geometry itself. So I've got the geometry in both, because both are spatial files. Equals gives me an exclamation point. It's not going to be equal. It's not going to be any of these standard relational operators. Instead, what I'm looking for is intersects. And so I'm looking for where does a petroleum storage facility's geometric shape, where does that intersect a congressional district? And so when I select intersects, you'll see the join works. I still have options for left or right or full outer. We'll just keep the ones where they match. I'll close that out and go to a new sheet now. So now you'll see I've got both shapefiles acting as tables for the data here, and I can still do things like take a look at the geometries for each one. So we'll double click that geometry. We're back to looking at places in Texas. I'll slice it up by facility name again, and get rid of the ones that don't have a name. And then what I can do is use a feature in Tableau where I'll create a dual axis with the latitude field. I could use the longitude as well. But what's nice here in Tableau, in some of the later versions, I can actually tell it what geometry or what geometric field defines latitude and longitude. So these are built in, these are generated, and they're generated by this collection, this geometry, which this one came from my petroleum facilities. But if I get rid of that along with the facility name, because we don't necessarily care about that, so we'll get rid of both. And instead replace that with my geometry for congressional districts. Now, Tableau will use that geometry on this section of the map. And I'll bring in the name of that one as well. So here I've got a geographic ID, so I can slice things up that way for my congressional district. Now, interestingly, I did end up with one congressional district here in Arkansas because I do have a storage facility that kind of overlaps into Arkansas. So the intersection found a match there as well. Here we'll just keep it Texas, so we'll get rid of that one. And now what I might do is get a nice dual axis going here, and you can see now I can see each congressional district, and if I flip those around so that the circles appear on top, now I can see both. And I can start to do some really cool analysis to say, you know what, which congressional districts have the most petroleum storage sites? And so here, I've got my congressional districts on this shelf, and so I could do something like let's take the facility name and just do a distinct count on color. So I'm going to right click, drag and drop, and say distinct count, and we'll get a nice color coded view of those congressional districts. And now I can start to say, oh, okay, so that's why that congressman likes petroleum so much, or who knows. But it starts to allow me to explore the data in all kinds of ways that I might not have seen it before. So all kinds of fun things that you could do with that. So I'm really loving all the geospatial features that are coming out. It seems like each version of Tableau comes out with just brand new and incredible geospatial features that you can use. You can imagine doing something like this for looking at customers in different sales districts, or how many hospitals are within certain regions serving your customers, or all kinds of uses for this kind of a feature. And something that would have taken maybe another tool or something to bring that data together, but now you can do it right in Tableau. So that's a lot of fun. I'm going to really quickly just build out just a real quick view here. Let's maybe look at state. No, that's no good. We just have Texas. That's no fun. What do we have here? So state and number of records. Alright, so Bridget does a great job of building out some really nice looking dashboards. I just throw things together and just drop it there. So this is totally meaningless and not even that pretty. But my point of creating a dashboard is to show off another feature here in Tableau. And this one is a currently released feature, so it is in the latest version. If you look down here in your objects list, you'll see your standard layout containers, text and image, blank web page, but there's a new one, extension. And this one is a game changer, truly is. What I can do is I can just drag this out onto the dashboard. And when I drop it, Tableau is going to prompt me for several things. It's going to ask me, first of all, where do I want to get this extension? Do I want to do I have it locally? Is it one of mine, or is it something that someone else has built and published to the gallery? And so we'll look at both of those options. I'll start with the gallery. When I click on gallery, Tableau now brings up a web page on another monitor, of course. But here is an ever-growing list of extensions that have been developed by others and then published to the gallery. So first, just a real quick word of explanation on an extension. So an extension is a set of code that makes use of an API that works like a plugin for your dashboard, and it does all kinds of interesting things. In fact, it can do anything that anyone could write an application for. So, for example, if you just look through here, you'll see things like write back, allowing you to write back to a data set based on actions taken in a dashboard. Here's some automated written analysis based on your dashboard. Lots of different usage monitors and performance insights. You'll see some more of those down through the list. So you drop on the extension and set it up, and it starts to monitor the usage of the dashboard, giving you maybe even more insight than what was available before. Show me more gives you some options for visualization types that aren't necessarily native to Tableau. You could build them in Tableau, or you could drop this extension in and have it build them for you. Here's another tracker, button filters, image filters, brush filters, all kinds of things. For those of you who have been looking for dynamic parameters, here they are as an extension. You pop this extension into your dashboard. You set up your parameter the way that it tells you, and it will update that parameter at runtime from the data. So everyone who has ever wanted that, it is now available. Date updater, so if you had a parameter that was a date list, this will update it automatically to select the latest date. things with bookmarks, other things, dynamic date range filters, possibilities for downloading data, all kinds of things. And these are what's there now, but this list will continue to grow as developers build out extensions and make them available. So these are publicly available. Some of them are paid, lots of them are free, and you can use them in your dashboards. And so if that weren't exciting enough, go to the gallery and start to grab extensions that you like. There's another possibility, and that is to build your own extensions. And this truly is incredible because you can use the API to build out your own extensions. So you select My Extension, and it comes up here with extensions, and it did not remember my directory, so I'm going to have to go find it real quick. But these allow you to build out your own extensions. You can write whatever code you want to interact with the dashboard, and it gives you all kinds of power and flexibility around that dashboard. So what I did was I created an extension that allows me to generate a random number. And why is that important, you might ask? Well, usually not. Usually you don't care about random numbers. I mean, you could do some Monte Carlo analysis or something with random numbers, but I every so often like to make games in Tableau. And their random numbers are incredibly important. In fact, I created a blackjack game for Tableau. But if you go look for that on Tableau Public, you'll find something that's completely broken and doesn't work. And the reason is that I kind of did a hacky workaround to get a random number generated. And it worked fine until Tableau updated their software and it broke my hack. Well, that's what I get for creating a hack. There's no guarantee that it will work. But with an extension, I can create something that's no longer a hack. Now I'm doing it the way that it's meant to be done. So here's what you have when you build your own extension. You really have three different files. One is a T-Rex file. I love that extension, T-Rex. That's your registration file. That's the one that I'll select here in a minute to tell Tableau to use it. The other is a JavaScript file that has the actual code of the extension, and the other is just an HTML file that will actually show up in the dashboard, whatever HTML you're using, and then the JavaScript works in conjunction with that. So it might by default give some instructions on how to use it, but ultimately it might be displaying something for the user, or it may completely be hidden and just supplying something for the user to begin with. So I'm going to select the registration file here, and it's going to prompt me a little bit and say, here's who created it, here's where it's being used. Right now I'm hosting it on my machine, but ultimately you could host this on any web server. And it's going to say, hey, are you going to give this access to your data? I'm going to allow it. I do trust that user. And then it's going to, here I've created something that doesn't quite look right. I'd need to work a little bit better, but it does tell me I need to add a float parameter named random number to the workbook. So I'll do that. I'll come over here, create a parameter, which I'll call random number. It is float, and that's fine. I'll say OK. Come back to my dashboard, and I'll even show that random number parameter now. So I've got random number here. It's set to 1 for now. But if I come back to my extension and we pretend like it just now loaded with the dashboard, so I'll reload. Now notice that it has set my parameter to a random number. And every time I reload, it should be a new random number. And this is great because now I can do all kinds of really cool things with that. I could create calculated fields that use that parameter. So maybe this is my random integer field, which would be, we'll do an integer of the random number times 10 plus 1. That should give me a number between 1 and 10. And maybe I'll do one more calculated field that just takes that random number. I don't even know what to call this because all I want to do is just create something like this where I take the number of records and do, no, not number of records. Let's do object ID and modulus random number. So totally a random kind of calculation here, but just to demonstrate that if I take that and place that here, now what I should see, I get 0 and 1. Does that make sense? What was my random integer? Oh, that's my sum. Let's make that a dimension. 2, so that totally makes sense. If my random integer was 2, I get 2 bars. Let's reload and get a new random number. Now I've got 7 bars, or at least I should. I do, so 0 through 6. And I could keep reloading every time I'm going to get something new. But I have built this in such a way that it will stay the same random number every time I load the dashboard, and no matter what else I do, until the dashboard is reloaded and that extension reloads. So all kinds of fun things that you could do with this. I've seen some people in the community use this to create trellis charts that automatically resize, all kinds of fun things that you could do. Now, just to show you, and not that everyone is going to even care, but just to show you a little bit about what it looks like, let me show you those 3 files. So we started by having that T-Rex file. That's the registration, and that just gives just some information about what's the name, who created it, and then this is the most important part. What is the URL of the HTML page? So for now, hosted on my machine, but potentially I can publish that to a web server somewhere else and have it hosted there. That HTML file then could look something like this. It's not too complex. It's got a table that says loading, and then it's got some instructions to use this extension. Add that parameter random number. And other than that, it just points to some JavaScript files. There's the standard jQuery. And then it also points to the extensions JavaScript, and so that one is important. But it also then references my JavaScript file here, which is the code that I write to tell it how to interact with things. And there's an entire API that you can learn, and you can look at it here. What I'm doing is I'm just doing, when it first loads, I'm looking at the dashboard, and then I'm getting the parameters. And then for each parameter, I'm looking at the name. If it matches my random number that I'm looking for, then I just set that value to a random number, which was really easy to generate in JavaScript. And so that allows me to set the parameter value. Here I'm just looking to say, do I show the instructions and the loading message or not? And so that makes that really easy. And really all I did was I just took an example from Tableau and just modified it to fit my needs. And This was very simple to do, although it took a little bit of figuring out, but it gave me a lot of confidence that, wow, you can do some really amazing things with this, let alone something really, really simple and small like generate a random number and fix a broken blackjack game. All right, well, let me check and see if we have any questions. And, oh, yes, we do. And Bridget, you feel free to come back on the line.
Yep.
All right, so question about regex after the call. Yeah, possibly, so definitely reach out and we can definitely have that discussion. Bridget, I see that you've answered one about the button.
And I'll just go ahead and reiterate that the dashboard button only works within the workbook. So if you want to filter off to another workbook on the server or elsewhere, you would still use URL filtering for that. And then the next question has to do with Section 508 compliance. So typically with dashboards, that deals with visually impaired. I can actually go ahead and take the screen real quick, and I'll kind of run through a couple things, both from Tableau directly as well as some additional solutions. And so I'll go ahead and take the screen real fast. So probably one of the most common questions is, how do we make Tableau accessible to screen readers and the like? And so there's a blog here. I'll go ahead and put this in the chat as well. That just talks about how do you design for accessibility, some of the changes that have been made to make things, the common server features more accessible. But the key challenge is getting dashboards themselves to be accessible. So looking at things like this and making sure that these can be caught by screen readers, which right now is pretty hard to do. So with the new extensions features, there are a couple different options. So you've got this AI by Wordsmith, and then you've also got this narratives for Tableau. And so I just went ahead on Google and very quickly put this together where you can kind of have this description, and this can be caught by a screen reader right here. So those are probably your best ways, is using that extension and then probably signing up with one of these services. I don't know how much these cost. I don't know if there is a cost, but I do know that these are kind of good options to start embedding into the dashboard. And so you can see where I've kind of started. It's fairly simple. There is a little bit of manual labor in that you've got to look at, okay, what have I done? It pulls up the fields, and then you just tell it, okay, I want this discrete, and it kind of tells you, here's this, here's that. So that's kind of that real quick. And then extensions will allow you to plug this in. So that is kind of probably right now the best way to really make things accessible. I do know that this is on Tableau's roadmap, and they are continuing to work on it. I don't have a timeline for further enhancements.
All right. There are several questions here about Tableau Prep. One is about a running flow message that just shows up and just sits there for a long time. Yes, I have seen that. It does seem to be better in recent versions. A lot depends on your data source as well. So Tableau Prep tries to be smart about the way that it handles different data sources, and if it's a large data source, you might see it do some sampling. But there are data sources that are slow, and there's no way around that, unfortunately. And then there are other times that it does occasionally get stuck on something, and I've had good experience with getting unstuck and then going again, but that does happen from time to time. Does it connect to APIs? So not yet. I wouldn't be surprised to see it connect to APIs in the future. Definitely, you can go onto the Tableau community and add ideas for Tableau Prep, just like you would with Tableau Desktop or Tableau Server. But that is not a current feature. There is a question about will there be the ability to schedule Tableau Prep steps and flows. So yes, Tableau has been pretty straightforward with that and said that yes, that's on their roadmap, and they're looking at doing that very soon because it is their top requested feature to be able to schedule things. And so yes. All right, there is a question. It came through at 1:35. Said, "What Tableau version is this?" Bridget, what were we looking at 1:35?
That might have been yours. So anything with Joshua was the .2 release. Most of my work was the .3.
Yeah, so if it was Bridget, other than the one thing, hers is in beta and coming soon. Mine is already released. But yeah, everything today was either 2018.2 or potentially .3. Is there a vetting process for extensions that are published in the gallery? I believe so, but honestly, I don't know what that process is.
I think on server you can enable them. So there is peace of mind for IT, and then you can kind of go through and allow certain things, and you can show prompts. So I do believe you've got control of, okay, here's this extension, and I'm allowing it.
Yeah, so definitely from your end, yes. If you're the Tableau server administrator, you can enable, disable, and control what extensions people are using. From Tableau's end, I know that there is a vetting process in terms of not anyone can just publish to the gallery, but I don't know the details. Definitely would be good to know that. How secure are these extensions? And need to get IT approval and that sort of thing. So yeah, that is going to be, I think, the question that you're going to want to verify with IT. So you can see there that you can block certain ones, you can enable certain ones. So if you have a URL that you trust, that that your developers are creating these extensions, so you trust them, that's definitely a possibility. If it's the gallery and you trust that, if it's just a random extension out in the wild, yeah, I would be careful because it can, and Tableau does warn you that it can access your data, and it can read anything on the dashboard, and that includes the data behind the views. All right. David asks about what about the snap to grid object? Oh, or object.
Yeah, so snap to grid I know is on the roadmap. I don't know when. I definitely know there's an interest. Part of the question, I believe, is figuring out where to snap the grid to.
Yeah, definitely so. All right. Yeah, someone here mentioned extensions are a powerful option. They definitely are. Also, a little bit of concern about screen size and resolution. You know what? Give us feedback like that because definitely, if multiple people are noticing that, then we'll make any adjustments on our end that are needed. So definitely let us know. We'll definitely look into that as well. How do you calculate the number of petro stations in each congressional district? Yeah, so what I did was I just did a count distinct of name. So in that data set, it was name that gave me a distinct station. So I just did a count distinct, and that worked if my view was at the level of congressional district. Have I ever had experiences trying to output prep .hyper to network locations? I have not. I have used prep both personally and as well with clients. I have done it in production, but I think everything has been local. It has been either local to my machine or local to a specific machine. So I can't say that I have a lot of experience outputting them to network locations. I wouldn't expect a lot of issues as long as it's a standard network location and network traffic is fine. But definitely let us know what issues you're running into, and it'd be interesting to see if there's any solution to it. Do the extensions work with the same desktop license? Yes, so they work with desktop as well as server, assuming the Tableau server is set up to allow the extensions. Yes. And do the tracking extensions work on Tableau Public? Bridget, do you know? That's been a question in the back of my mind in terms of how
I
extensions work on
know
Public, but I haven't actually looked into it yet.
I know temporarily they were disabled, and I don't know if they've re-enabled them yet. So I
Okay.
know before Iron Viz, so this last Iron Viz, they were blocked, and I don't know if they've been reopened up.
Okay. So that's even a little bit more than I knew right off. That's a great question. We'll have to come back to it though because I don't know right off. All right. Well, we are just about perfect on time, and I don't see any more questions. If you think of anything after we sign off, feel free to reach out via email. Uh, Feel free to reach out in other ways as well, Twitter and the like. As always, it's been a pleasure having you join us. We love doing it. Feel free to give us any feedback, and definitely drop by if you're at conference. We'd love to see you. See you later.